a beautiful day, brother. Not perfect, but we have peace. I will prove my worth to my pride. The hunt isn't over until I've blooded my axe. Fight beside me, brother. You won't stand with me into the fray. Let fury ignite your heart! It's not perfect, but we have peace. A dark plot ties our fates together. To me! I will prove my worth to my pride. More join our cause!
we are driving down the road, and all of a sudden, bang! Oh! There is a crack in our windshield. You know.
There's a lot of cross synergy with what we're doing already, and also really improves matchups against the more difficult matchups for the Mardu decks, like fast combo decks, for example. So I really like this deck. I think it feels very strong, and as long as the mana base cooperates, which it has for the most part, obviously you are going to have to mulligan a few awkward hands here and there, but I'm surprised that the mana base works out here, which is a really nice upside. So next up we'll have a look at the sideboard, and we're going to start off here with Fragment Reality, because this is definitely the most important card in the sideboard in my opinion, because it is very, very important in a number of matchups. So first of all, against Mono Green Devotion, this is really nice at being able to take out their 1 mana ramp, whether that's a Utopia Sprawl or Birds of Paradise, whatever their 1 mana dorks are. Now typically against stock Mono Green Devotionists, you're a big favourite, because until they can get calmed down, they don't really have any way of interacting with you, so you can typically just beat them with a combo or using Bombardment and a Ajani before they can really start getting their hate pieces down. However, I've seen some Devotion lists that are splashing white for some hate cards that are really difficult for you to deal with, namely the 5 mana Elish Norn and also Yasharn as well, which both stop you comboing off and both stop a lot of your other synergies as well. So having 4 Fragment Reality in the deck is not only good at slowing them down to prevent them getting those hate cards down, but they're also really important at being able to answer a Yasharn or an Elish Norn, and then you're just free to combo off after that as well. So very, very important against the Devotion decks. Then second of all, Jeskai Control has typically been running sort of the ETB hate cards, whether that's especially blocks your or Prayer, Guide of Souls, sometimes Primal Prayers itself, but you typically want to take out the Guide of Souls, Lucky Witness and Trap Finder to be good, like Deadly Dispute and Corrupted Conviction are decent cards, but they feel a little bit underwhelming compared to Deadly
Fear, terror, and horror
on
are the ingredients
out for the MTG numbers, but thankfully got more time on my hands now, so the channel will be back online. I'm going to have a bunch more deck guide videos coming out over the next few weeks and months. So yeah, sorry for the delay in videos, but should have a bunch more coming soon, so keep your eyes out for that. But anyway, let's just get straight into it. So this is Historic, and this is my 4-color Sam combo deck. So ever since the nerfs, I think it's kind of obvious to a lot of people that the best thing, or the most powerful proactive thing to be doing in the format is Ajani plus Goblin Bombardment, because this was the part of the energy deck that stuck around and didn't get nerfed, and arguably was the strongest part of it. I think Goblin Bombardment was just the mirror breaker in a lot of these energy mirror matches, or, you know, these mirror matches against decks that are running a lot of small creatures. So I spent a lot of time trying to figure out what the best home for Ajani and Bombardment is. Obviously, the Mardu Sacrifice decks have been one of the best decks in the format, because, you know, Ajani is kind of good on its own, but for Bombardment to be good, you also need to be running other Sacrifice fodder, because if you draw this without the Ajani, it's not really doing too much. And my issue with the Mardu deck, I do think the Mardu deck is very strong and is a top tier deck for sure, but for put a lot of nerfs, and arguably was the strongest part of it. I think Goblin Bombardment was just the mirror breaker in a lot of these energy mirror matches, or, you know, these mirror matches against decks that are running a lot of small creatures. So I spent a lot of time trying to figure out what the best home for Ajani and Bombardment is. Obviously, the Mardu Sacrifice decks have been one of the best decks in the format, because, you know, Ajani is kind of good on its own, but for Bombardment to be good, you also need to be running other Sacrifice fodder, because if you draw this without the Ajani, it's not really doing too much. And my issue with the Mardu deck, I do think the Mardu deck is very strong, for sure, but my issue with that is, first of all, that the other sacrifice outlets that you run in order for your sacrifice fodder, like Unlucky Witness and Trap Finder, to be good, like Deadly Dispute and Corrupted Conviction, are decent cards, but they feel a little bit underwhelming compared to Bombardment, and I really wanted to try and find a sacrifice shell that can run Birthing Ritual, because I think this is one of the best sacrifice outlets. I think this is one of the most underplayed cards from MTG.
Surrender
I really want to figure out a home for this as well. My other issue with Mardu Energy is that it has kind of a weak spot to fast combo and control decks as well. So having a way to fit a combo that can just win quickly and not have to rely on burning the opponent out with Bombardment and stuff like Marionette Apprentice was really appealing. So this is definitely felt like the best shell that I've tried so far. So obviously we've got 4 Ajani, 4 Bombardment. That's kind of the staple of this deck. Such a powerful engine on its own. Can close games out incredibly quickly. Gives you really good reach as well. 4 Amp Raptor as well. We're a Lurus deck. We're running red. So Amp Raptor is kind of, you know, a no-brainer here. Card is incredibly strong. Also helps find your key pieces more consistently. You know, one of the other main reasons I wanted to run Birthing Ritual, in addition to it being great in this combo shell because it can find your Samwise combo pieces, is that it can also find your Ajani more consistently. You know, the player who can get Ajani plus Bombardment set up first is usually the one who has a massive advantage. So once you have Bombardment, using Birthing Ritual, Ajani is really good. You can also use Birthing Ritual to flip Ajani. Obviously, flipping it during your end step doesn't allow you to activate it immediately, but the really nice thing about running Sacrifice is you have a lot of good chump blockers, so you can often just flip it with Birthing Ritual, chump block to buy you time, and then start going off on the journey the following turn. So Birthing Ritual, incredibly good. And the other thing about Birthing Ritual is it's also really nice with the combo package that we're running in the deck. So if you're not familiar with the Samwise combo, the 3 combo pieces are Cauldron Familiar, Samwise, and then a free sacrifice outlet. And the way it works is, once you have Samwise in play, if you then play Cauldron Familiar, you get a food token. You can then sacrifice it either to Bartolome or Goblin Bombardment, which gives you another piece of redundancy for Bombardment to make it good. You can then get Cauldron Familiar into the graveyard, bring it back with the food to drain the opponent, get another food token off the Samwise, and then sacrifice it again. So basically, infinite damage, infinite life, loops, and then obviously Bombardment makes the combo a little bit quicker because you get an additional damage to the opponent's face as well. So the really nice thing about having these 3 cards together is they give the deck a combo angle of attack, they make Birthing Ritual better, and there's a lot of good crossover between the 2 sides of the deck as well. So first of all, we've got Cauldron Familiar, which first of all is a cat, so it's a creature that we can sacrifice to flip a Johnny without needing to sacrifice the 2/1, which is obviously a higher opportunity cost, which is a nice synergy. The drain effect gives you good reach as well, so there will be a number of games where you're just reliant on dealing chip damage with the Bombardment to win the game, and having Cauldron Familiar as just an additional source of chip damage is really nice, so it just gives you additional reach. And then Samwise, a bunch of good synergies with this card as well. Obviously producing food tokens is very nice when we have Familiar but don't have a sacrifice outlet, but the other ability to sacrifice 3 foods and get back a historic card is really nice in this deck because we can use it to get back Bartolome from the graveyard if we need a sacrifice outlet to go off. But very importantly, we can also use it to bring back a Johnny from the graveyard, which is really strong because if you don't have a sacrifice outlet, the opponent will often prioritize killing the Johnny, so getting it back is nice. And if you do have a sacrifice outlet, I've had a number of situations where I have a flip the Johnny, activate it to deal a bunch of damage to the opponent, then use Samwise to bring back another one from the graveyard, play that one, sacrifice a cat, flip it again, then activate it again and deal a bunch of damage. You can often just one-shot the opponent out of nowhere with that. You can also use Samwise to bring back Lurrus from the graveyard, which is really, really powerful in long grindy games, and then also Haywire Might from the sideboard, which is very important against opposing Bombardment decks. So the activated ability on this is very nice in longer games as well. And then Bartolome, probably the weakest card in the deck, but it's very, very important, mainly because we want to be able to get a sacrifice outlet off Birthing Ritual. There will be a number of situations where you have Birthing Ritual in play, and then say you go Samwise into Cauldron Familiar. You can then use Birthing Ritual to sacrifice the Cauldron Familiar, put the Bartolome in play, and then just combo off during the opponent's end step. So having it as a way to search for a sacrifice outlet off Birthing Ritual is really important. And then past that, it is a reasonable card on its own. You know, it does give us another sacrifice outlet to trigger Trap Finder and Unlucky Witness whenever we want, and is also just a threat that grows. I have won a few games just by growing this and pressuring the opponent, or just having it there as a big blocker as well. So Bartolome mainly here as, well, first of all, in addition to Bombardment, it just maximizes your chances of finding a free sacrifice outlet once you do have Samwise and Cauldron Familiar, both of which you can also find off Birthing Ritual. So it just maximizes your chances of finding the combo, and is just, you know, another way that we can trigger our sacrifice fodder as well. Speaking of which, we've got Goblin Trap Finder and Unlucky Witness in addition to Cauldron Familiar here, and these are definitely the best sacrifice fodder. Trap Finder is great in this deck because basically everything you can find off it is a good hit. Bartolome and Samwise are obviously a little bit awkward because you don't get a discount off it, but there will be a ton of situations where, you know, you have a Samwise and Cauldron Familiar and it hits a Bartolome and it just gets you the final combo piece that you need. Additionally, no matter what you get off Trap Finder, you can sacrifice it to Birthing Ritual during your end step before it triggers, and thankfully Arena triggers it the right way as well, or it does for me at least anyway. You know, it will trigger the Birthing Ritual before the creature sacrifices itself, which really mitigates the downside of this. But some of the best cards that you can find off this, Johnny's really nice because you do get the discount, and you can flip it. If you do flip it and you get it off a Trap Finder, it will sacrifice itself during the end step, but oftentimes the extra damage you get off the zero ability is worth doing that. And obviously you can choose to sacrifice the Johnny to another effect like Bombardment, Birthing Ritual, and Bartolome, and you still get the 2-1 off it as well. Probably the best card that we can get off it is Amped Raptor though, because again we get the discount, it gets haste so we can get in for an attack, and it obviously gets another card off the ability there as well, which is really strong. So Amped Raptor, incredibly strong card to get off Trap Finder, and there are some really nice cards that we can get off from the sideboard as well. Remorseful Cleric is really important against the Woodland deck, so being able to get that for 1 mana, attack, and then sacrifice it to exile the opponent's graveyard during the end step is really nice. Crawl Harpooner is also really big. Being able to give this haste is really strong, because if you've got a stacked graveyard, this can become like a 7 or 8-2. I typically only bring this in against Wizards, but if they have no blockers, I've managed to win against Izzet Wizards by getting this down as a 7-2 haste, and just attacking for a ton of damage, and then sacrificing it to Bombardment, for example. And then Haywire Might is also mainly for Bombardment decks. I'll go over these when I go to the sideboard a little bit later, but getting this as a 0 cost just basically gives you a free attack with a 1/2, and then basically just gives you a green disenchant for 1 mana that also gains you 3 life as well. So a bunch of really good cards to get off the sideboard with Amp Trapture as well. But Trap Finder is just really solid, helps us find combo pieces more consistently as well. And then Unlucky Witness, very, very strong card here as well. Helps us keep land drops when we need, and also similarly gives towards whatever we need. And very importantly, if you are going to sacrifice this, it's a very easy trick to do, is just set a stop during your end step and sacrifice it to a card like Goblin Bombardment during your end step if you need to use multiple creatures to ping down an opposing creature, for example, and then you'll get both cards until your next end step the following turn. If you sacrifice this during your main phase, you're going to be wasting the cards you get off it a lot of the time, so bear that in mind. And then we also get to run Lurrus as the companion, which is a really big deal. Obviously, Lurrus is the best companion in the format, and it's a really nice mana sink if you end up flooding out, and basically everything that you can bring back with Lurrus is high